Okay, we're going to give it a couple more minutes. People are just straggling in right now. For those of you that are joining us now, my name is Lily Zanotti, and I'm with the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to wait one more minute, and then we're definitely going to get started here. We're just giving people a chance to get registered and come in. I do ask you to keep your video cameras off. You are all on mute. And for this webinar, if you don't mind, we're going to do all our communications through the chat box at the bottom of your screen. We have Megan Corsi, which is the Director of Client Experiences with Sandler. She's going to be monitoring all the questions, so feel free to put anything that you want to ask Kaylee, our presenter. And okay, so I think I'm going to get started right now. And again, welcome everybody. Welcome to this morning's webinar on how to succeed leading through the COVID-19 that we're dealing with right now. Again, my name is Lily Zanotti. I'm the Programs and Events Coordinator with the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. And we welcome you this morning. And I just want to get right in and get started on our webinar because we have a lot to cover, and I'm sure you have some questions that you want to ask. So at this moment, I'm going to introduce to you our keynote speaker and presenter today. Her name is Haley Haggerty. She's the Vice President with Next Level in sales and sales management consulting firm and one of the top Sandler companies in the world. Haley is an industry sought-out leader and a speaker, and Haley has asked to join by the Forbes Coaches Council, where her articles and writing are featured on the Forbes.com and other publications. She is also featured speaker to many companies, CEO groups, industry forums, organization, and is a regular contributor to Sandler's How to Succeed podcast. She is a 3-time presenter at the Sandler World Client Summit and voted last year as the all-time favorite summit presenter, and you're all going to see why. Haley is also a key participant in the Harvard University's MBA and Executive MBA program featuring Sandler training. Her coaching and consulting expertise include sales process design and implementation, accountability, sales team performance, behavior and personality assessments, hiring, onboarding, process design, and delivering the world's best sales and sales leadership methodology and training with Sandler. Haley's passion for what she does and her commitment to her clients is unmatched. Outside of Sandler and Next Level, Haley enjoys spending time with her husband, Rich, and their golden retriever, Molly, along with having some spare time of teaching yoga. So at this time, let me welcome Haley. And just give me 1 second, Haley. I'm going to open up your video. And there you go.
Well, good morning, everyone. Lily, thank you so much for those amazing, kind words this morning. What an intro. And I want to thank all of you for committing time this morning to think about your own leadership and think about your organizations maybe in a different way, your people in a different way, and certainly yourself in a different way as we are going through these temporary, hopefully, interesting times. So thank you so much for being here. We will be on for about 45 minutes this morning, so delivering you some value. My colleague, Megan, who has been with our organization for quite some time, is an invaluable part of my team. And Megan is the Director of Client Experience at our organization at Next Level and Sandler, and she's going to be monitoring the chat today. So we will have some interactive moments in our conversation together, and we'll be facilitating questions that we will take towards the end. So look forward to including her in our conversation today. I also want to have a special shout out. I think there are a few clients on this morning. You know who you are, so welcome. It's always good to see you. So let's talk about Sandler. For those of you that don't know us, who we are. So Next Level, we have been a part of Sandler training for 24 years. Our company is headquartered in Franklin, Massachusetts, and we've been there all 24 years. Franklin is a great town, so go Franklin. But a little bit about Sandler. So Sandler has been around for many years. Sandler's headquarters, corporate headquarters, is in Baltimore, Maryland. And we do many things all the way from training to coaching to consulting and helping organizations that you would know the names of, large, huge companies that have people all over the world, all the way down to small to medium-sized businesses right here in Massachusetts. We have worked with companies in probably 85 different industries. So it's been a wonderful experience to get to know every single company that's really committed to their people and passionate about what they do and what they sell and what they make. Everything we do at Sandler is focused on sales and sales leadership. That's our strike zone, that's our sweet spot, and helping companies really understand a couple of things in 3 key areas. And maybe wondering, why do companies come to work with us, come to know us? And the first thing, and we're going to dive into each of these a bit today, is really, and these are in no particular order, by the way, but people, right? Worried that maybe they don't have the right people, unsure if the people they have are in the right seats, and oftentimes not sure if the people they have really are managed under clear, well understood mutual expectations. Oftentimes there may be some performance issues or some performance gaps with the team. So that's sort of the people bucket. The middle bucket is process, right? So companies of all shapes, all sizes, all industries. I think now more than ever, certainly in the last 3 years, we have seen companies think about, what is their sales process? If I were to ask you to write down your sales process, I'm sure all of you on this phone could do that, but could your whole organization, and would it be the same? And if the answer is less than an immediate yes, then that probably means the sales process needs to be fleshed out, needs to be defined, it needs to be clear across the board. Because if we don't really have a consistent sales process, it leads to lots of inefficiency within the organization, and certainly things like wasted time and delays in our pipeline. So sales process is a really, really, really big key and sort of definable area for us. Just like having a hiring process and an accountability process is important to the organization. So process is a big word for us. And then pipeline too. So how are we managing our pipeline? Do we have flow in our pipeline? Are we taking things from suspect all the way down to close? And is there movement in that pipeline? Do we know what the next action items are? Do we know what the next steps are? Do we have quality opportunities in the pipeline, or are those filled with a lot of hope? So pipeline is certainly a big area for us, and we spend a lot of time talking about skill here, behavior, expectations, and certainly account mapping. So those are really the 3 buckets that we influence in organizations through both the sales and sales leadership lens. In today's conversation, we're going to spend some time talking about 3 areas. 1, your people, the importance of the team that you have and what we can do to make sure that our people are as supported and productive as possible. The second area we're going to spend some time in is really thinking about the organization sort of as a whole. All of you on this call are leaders, no matter what your title is. So what are the keys to having a successful organization? Are there some blind spots that maybe we've been overlooking that during these temporary, interesting times, we could re-examine and make sure that we've shored up for the future? And certainly, last but not least, is talking about ourselves as leaders. What can we do to make sure that we are in the best possible place as a leader to be there for our people and our organization? So I don't know if this image resonates with you at all, but when I saw it, I thought that it made a lot of sense to me about sales leadership. And sales leadership is very sort of misunderstood. I think sales leadership, and I'm sure many heads would be nodding in agreement with me, that sales leadership is probably the hardest role in any organization. So whether your title actually has sales leader in it, or it's president, or it's owner, or it's vice president, or it's managing director, or whatever your title is, all of us have influence over the sales organization that we support and that we drive. And sales management has a lot of layers to it. It's also sort of the most undertrained, undersupported function in an organization, because there's a lot of hats that we play as sales leaders. We have to be coaches. We have to be great supervisors. If not more than we do have to be coaches, right? We have to have systems in place. We have to build the right sort of platform, behaviors, and systems for our people to be successful. And then we have to have a coaching practice that helps those people sort of drive the behaviors, helps them improve, and helps support them along the way. We also have to be great trainers, right? We have to teach things to our people, products, how we do things, our process, reinforce methodology, reinforce sales concepts. So there's certainly this training element. And then last but not least, there's this mentoring component that I'm sure many of you have played in your organizations in terms of mentoring your team and mentoring your people along the way, providing feedback, and certainly a place of dialogue with your people to help them make sure that they are as successful and they're achieving the goals of which that they set out. So we play a lot of roles as sales leaders, and we play a lot of different parts, as I should say. And there's a lot of responsibility that's riding on us. So as we are diving into this topic today, I think it's important to think about those 4 hats: coach, supervisor, trainer, and then ultimately mentor to our people. And where maybe have I spent too much time? Where have I spent too little time? Where could I, in this discussion, find ways to help support myself and also my team? If you'd like to participate in the chat, this would be a great sort of opportunity, and Megan's going to be here monitoring it. But what's one thing that you're struggling with as a leader right now? I know many of our clients, again, they span all different types of industries, organizations, verticals, and I think our sales leaders have come to us struggling with lots of different things over the years. But as we look at these last 6, 7, 8 weeks, it's been things like, how do I really hold my team accountable? I had an outside sales team, now they're inside salespeople. What does that look like? How do I make sure that my people are as effective as they possibly can with their behavior? And given the environment of being from home, that certainly has changed things. How do I make sure that as a leader that I'm still with my people on a regular basis, but I'm not being the pushy micromanager that I don't want to be, right? So maybe some of those things spark some good conversation in our chat today as we continue sort of down this path about how do we become the most effective leader that we can during these times. So as we think about your team for a second, let's talk about some areas of team performance or team outlook. So how do you feel about right now? If I were to say to you on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about your team's personal presence? Like, that's a very important part of selling, as we're talking about selling today, and sales leadership. Our personal presence plays a huge, huge, huge impact on the conversations that we're going to have. And we know that sales is a series of meaningful and purposeful conversations. So in order to have meaningful and purposeful conversations, I have to have presence there. And that's not only just body language, but it's tonality, it's the words that we speak, and how we function through those conversations. And I could say that for many of you, I'm sure that you can relate to this. We were 6, 7, 8 weeks ago in in-person meetings. Many of us, our organizations operated having a meeting in a conference room, around a table, at a desk where we could physically be with each other. And now that has shifted right to the virtual environment. So I know with our clients, we're spending time talking about how does our personal presence, still probably the most important thing to having an effective, meaningful, and purposeful conversation, how does that translate now to the virtual environment? Because I can tell you that most of my clients have not been used to that virtual space, right? So now I've got a camera coming into my home office, into my basement, wherever I am. How do I maintain effective personal presence? And I'm sure that that's one area that you've been working on with your team. What about prospecting? Again, if I were to ask you scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about your team's prospecting? And maybe some of you are out there selling now, but as you think about sales over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, I think we've seen a bit of a curve. Right at the beginning, it was sort of this, I don't really want to sell. It's the timing's not right. I don't want to be salesy. We would never teach anybody to be salesy, but the feeling of, I don't want to put pressure on people. It's an awkward time. We're dealing with this strange, never before seen or experienced time in our lives. So how do I maintain my sales goals? And now we're 6, 7, 8 weeks in, right, getting itchy. Now it's moved to May 18th, but how do I still maintain my level of prospecting, hunting for business, expanding business, finding new opportunities, going back to opportunities that didn't work out, sort of that recapture piece, right? So how is my team doing at staying on top of pipeline? Yesterday, we had a sales training session with one of our clients, and we looked at their pipeline. And they had many opportunities that were stuck in what I'll call sort of the middle. They've had a conversation, but there's been not a lot of action items. When I said to them, what's the next action item? They couldn't really give me anything other than following up. And so if that's what your next action item is, or your people are telling you that in your pipeline, then that's a symptom of things getting stuck in the middle. And when things get stuck in the middle, we sort of have a pancake happen to our sales funnel and our pipeline. You have to be mindful about that. So next action item is, if it's anything less than it's a phone call on such and such date, or it's a virtual call on such and such date, or it's a no for now, or it's a no forever, or it's something very specific. They've made me a referral or an introduction to another part of the organization. That's a symptom of things getting stuck in the pipeline. And we'll talk about why that happens and why salespeople get stuck in that in a moment. Performance. How do I feel about my team's performance? Do I have the right people? Are they performing? How did they do with adapting and shifting into this new environment? Were they able to do that? Was I able to, as a leader, effectively coach and support them to do that? Are they the right people? I think many of our clients too are thinking about, do I have the right people on my team, and how do I find A players and sort of reorganize what maybe I had in the past? And then profit potential, talking about numbers and goals. How are my team achieving the goals that they set out? Are we still on track? Have we taken a bit of a detour like we all have, but how do we get right back there, right? So those are some things to be thinking about in terms of your team. Presence, prospecting, pipeline, their performance, and ultimately their profit potential. And if it isn't where you want it to be, that's okay, because there are remedies for that. So we talked about your people. I guess the next mindset shift is, how do you feel about your organization? And here are some other P's for you, right? So we shift to the organization for a second, and we think about scale 1 to 10. How do I feel about our planning? Is our organization at the level that we need it to be? 10 would be that we plan for every scenario, even the unplanned scenarios, and that we're prepared and ready to adapt, shift, and adopt new behaviors, new process, and we're ready to go. Planning is also a very important part when you think about your salespeople and your sales team, and how important it is for pre-call planning, post-call debriefing. What does that process look like? Do we have a process for planning? You will outperform your competition more by the planning that you do for those conversations than anything else. And that's a real growth area, I think, for organizations today. So planning is certainly a big piece of it. I spoke about positions a bit and people, but do we have the right people? Do we have the right positions? Did the positions that we had 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, were those going to get us where we need to go in the future? Do we need to rethink that a bit in terms of efficiency? pipeline, I spoke about process. So what is our sales process? Is it functional? Is it the right sales process? Could it be improved? Could we do some different things? Could it be redefined? Do my people even know what it is? How about this one? Do my prospects know what my sales process is? So process is a big piece. And I'm speaking about the sales side, but I will also touch on today the importance of having an accountability process, the importance of having a coaching process. And I think this sort of virtual environment has caused us to think about what are those processes. In the past, we were sort of in a company, right? We could stop by Mary's office and say, hey, Mary, let's have a coaching session. Or Joe could stop by and schedule a coaching call with you. But what's my process for that? Like, do we have a weekly check-in, check-out process? That's the best thing you can do for yourself for accountability. And I will make sure that I leave this talk giving you sort of what that process is. What about performetrics, KPIs? Do we have clear, well-understood key performance indicators? Not necessarily lagging indicators, but indicators that are the warning lights. You know, you think about your car and you've got the dashboard and you've got sort of the gas gauge and some other things, but those are sort of indicators about how it's functioning. And so your key performance indicators, think about your sales organization right now. Do we know what those are? Do we have our sights set on 3, maybe 4, no more than 5 key performance indicators that would indicate the health of our pipeline and ultimately the health of our business? And then certainly, last but not least, passion. How do you feel about your own organization's passion and commitment to what it is that you do? And I think now more than ever, I have seen some incredible stories. And I'm sure all of you can relate. And I'm sure there are some incredible stories in here on this call today about the passion that you have for what you do, for what you sell, for your people, and for the organization that you work for. And I hope that that passion is really high, because how you feel about yourself and your organization is how other people are going to feel. We're feeling sort of mediocre or really not that committed to ourselves or our people, well, they're not going to feel the same way, right? They're going to feel the same exact sort of energy that we are. So passion is a big piece to our organization's success and should not be forgotten. So think about those things, right? Like your people and then your organization. Now, this is an icon that some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with, and my clients on the phone. You would be remiss to think that I would not talk about this, but the cornerstone of success, let's talk about this for a second. This is a Sandler icon, and it's the most important, one of the most important, if not, in my opinion, the most important thing that we teach. I mean, we certainly have an incredible amount of sales tactics, and you've probably heard of those and been aware of those, and if you haven't, that's our sweet spot. But this is a very important sort of outlook about why things go wrong and maybe the misunderstood nomers about what success is. So if you think about what I said here, why insert role fails? So why do salespeople fail? Why do sales coaches fail? Why do sales leaders fail? Why do I fail at any role that I play in life? If I want to be a better runner, or I want to be a better swimmer, or I want to be a better yogi, whatever sort of the title is of role, why do we fail, or why do people fail at that? And what does that have to do with success? So success, let's talk about each of these 3 things, and then I'm going to break this down for you. And hopefully you're taking some notes. So success is in the middle, right? If we want to succeed at any sort of role that we play in life, there are 3 really important elements to that: behavior, attitude, and technique. And each of these triangles also has its own set of triangles, but we'll stick to the main 3 for now. And I would say most sales training, most consulting, most sales leaders at times are focused on the technique triangle. They're focused on skill. They're focused on what do you need to do to be successful from a tactical skill perspective. And that's really important. We spend a lot of time on product knowledge, and you have to know your products backwards and forwards, absolutely. But where it sort of all falls apart is that we forget about the importance of the left side of the triangle. So technique, while it's a pillar and it's on there, it's critical. We have to get the other two engines firing for that to be successful. And what do I mean by that? So behavior, it's the actions that you take on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and the choices you make that's really the fuel to your success. Because we can't control outcomes. And I hope that that's a liberating statement for you as leaders. I think most leaders, unfortunately, are focused on controlling outcomes. And most people and most human beings are focused on controlling outcomes. I spoke about this last week on our sales webinar, and I'm translating this in terms of leadership. So we can't control outcomes. We can't control whether or not we make a sale. We can't control whether or not we close a piece of business today. We can't control all of those things. But what we can control is what we choose to do or choose not to do. And that's our behavior. And underneath behavior sits some things: goals, our plans, and our actions. Goals, plans, and actions. And most people, like less than 10% of people, actually have personal, written, and professional goals. So if I asked you, just like about your sales process, if I asked you or your team, hey, what are your top 3 goals right now? Could you tell me? So goals are really important. If we don't have any goals, then we certainly don't really have any plans, and forget daily activity, because what is it all adding up to? And people come to work for themselves first, then a boss, then a company. A lot of times we have that backwards. We think company, boss, then themselves. But all of you go to work for yourself, and then a boss, and then a company. So we have to think about, as leaders, how do we get to the reasons why people come to work? And why people come to work is their personal and professional goals. And then we have to help our people create a plan to achieve those goals. And then the secret is our activity, what we do every single day. If I want to get better at running, for example, I can't say I'm going to be able to run 26 miles tomorrow, right? I can't be a marathoner tomorrow. But it's the little things that I do every single day on my plan that will then achieve the goal. If I said I wanted to be a marathon runner in 6 months, that's the goal, then I have to think about, all right, what's the plan then to achieve that? And then what do I have to do daily to achieve that plan? And that's the secret to sales leadership. That's also the secret to not being a pushy micromanager, because pushy micromanagement comes from controlling results. It comes from looking at our CRM, which, no knock to CRM, we love a good CRM, but it comes from looking at that at the end of the quarter, at the end of the month, and saying, hey Joe, hey Mary, you didn't do something, or you're not really meeting your goal, so what's up? And then we create this friction between our people versus thinking about, how do I help my people really understand why they come to work, help them create a plan together of how to achieve that and how to achieve the company goals too. And then how do I help them create a daily action plan so that they know what they're doing, and that I can make, as a manager, as a leader, I can make tweaks in that, and I can help them make adjustments. And most people leave. When they leave a company, so they come to work for themselves, when they leave a company, the number one reason is because sales leaders added 0 value, that their boss and their leader added no value. And the reason is because the leader was concerned only about results, and there was never really any influence on what it took daily to be successful. So behavior is our engine. It's the only thing we can control in life. And that is a life principle. Then we have attitude, which is where our belief system sits. And we're going to talk about beliefs and the importance of being an effective coach and a leader for your people. But beliefs have huge impact on our success. So we won't do anything in life that conflicts with our belief system. So if my belief system says that right now is not a good time to call a prospect because they don't want to hear from me, then I'm not going to do it. And no matter what the technique says, no matter how great Haley could teach some techniques, some great phone skills, as long as my belief system says that I'm not going to make that call because that's what's going to happen, they're going to hang up on me or they don't want to hear from me, then I'm never going to make that call. And as sales leaders, that's where we have to get to in coaching. We're coaching behavior and beliefs. And technique will come. We support the technique, we train the technique, but it's really how we coach and supervise behavior and beliefs. And that right there is the power that you have as a sales leader. And for yourself too, I'm speaking to you all as well. You think about this triangle for yourself. Do I have the right behaviors as a sales leader? Am I doing the right things on a daily basis that are going to help me achieve my goals? What about my own beliefs? Do I have the right beliefs as a sales leader? Do I have the belief that my people are just sitting around watching Netflix and then that creates some sort of friction with me and my team? Or do I have the belief that my people are successful? My team is able to handle these adjustments, right? And then we move into some skill development. So this is our secret to success. And by the way, selling, 80% of selling has everything to do with the conceptual nature of selling. Only 20% of selling is really technical. We spend so much time on the technical part, we forget about the conceptual piece. So behavior all day long will always be your fuel. It will always help you get out of your comfort zone. It will always be your anchor. If I have the belief, or my sales team has the belief, that now is not the right time to call a prospect, I got to help my people go back to your behavior. Well, what would your goals tell you that you have to do? What does your daily plan tell you you have to do? And that prevents the phone from being heavy. That is where the real coaching is. So think about this triangle for yourself and for your team. So if behavior is the engine, let's talk about this for a second. There has probably been some new behaviors that your teams had to adopt. I mean, let's face it, in the first few weeks of this, our old behaviors just don't play well anymore. Right? We're not able to necessarily go and sit in front of a conference room. We're not able to have this conversation in person. We're not able to sort of go to an after hours or a happy hour or anything like that, right? We're having to do different things in our organization. We're having to shift into some new behaviors. Your team may or may not have been active in social selling, right? So how do I now put articles out there or value propositions, or how do I be effective at a webinar for my customers, right? Like all of these new behaviors. And the thing of it is, though, we have to make sure that our new behaviors are still just as consistent as our old behaviors. I mean, unless our goals changed, which maybe your people's goals have changed, or maybe your goals have changed, I don't know. But it doesn't matter what the goal changes to. What matters is consistency. So if you have the goals clear and you have a plan, then we have to consistently perform those behaviors. And consistency with behavior leads to consistency with results. So I'll say that again, consistency with behavior leads to consistency with results. If you're seeing inconsistent results in your organization, or with your people, or with an individual, it has to do with the lack of consistency with their behavior, and most likely a lack of awareness about what they should be doing in the first place. And that's really sort of what creates these dichotomies with leaders, where leaders then feel like they have to parent their people. Most leaders, in a way, are parenting their people because they're sort of holding them to a standard of something that they believe is true, versus thinking about how do we come together as two adults and figure this thing out as a cohesive unit, right? So consistency leads to consistent results. Expectations. Do I have clear behavior mapping? Do I have clear results? Do I have clear expectations of my people? I think that this is also an area where we could, as leaders, re-examine what we've been doing up to this point and make sure that my expectations of what people do on a daily, weekly basis are still just as clear as I'm sure they were when we were all together. So consistency and expectations are two really important things as a leader to make sure that we have the kind of organization that I know you all want to, which is a successful, well-run, happy, passionate organization. Expectations are really your friend. And then smarter goals, like how do we have goals that are specific and they're measurable and they're attainable and all of those things, right? I think sometimes goals become way too like squishy and we can't really identify it. So how do we have goals that are smarter, that we work hard and we work smartly at the same time? And then tracking behavior is so important. So yes, tracking results, very key, but how do we track behavior? Because that's really where you can influence change, and that's where you can influence your people the most, is on those daily, weekly activities and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to drive to the right results. Let's talk about beliefs for a second. I think it's important. I shared a couple of examples of beliefs with you, but as we're moving around the triangle, beliefs, this is a big piece for how we can help influence the changes that people need to make daily. And we all do, right? We're not all stagnant in what we do every day, right? We have to make shifts and adjustments, and certainly this time has highlighted it. So if we think about beliefs for a second, because beliefs play an enormous role in our success. If we have a supporting belief, then we're going to adopt something. If we have a lack of supporting belief, then we're going to fight it all day long. The key is, how do we help our people break through those? And most people, by the way, have some negative beliefs. I think sometimes we don't realize how much our own internal dialogue affects what we do every day. And I said this last week, it's pretty powerful, but as human beings, studies show that we have about 60,000 thoughts per day, which is a lot of traffic in the brain. And 2/3 of those beliefs, so 60,000 thoughts, 2/3 of those beliefs are negative and they're repeating. So not only do we have a lot of traffic going through our brain, but we also tell ourselves non-supporting things. I mean, you can think about what you've already said to yourself today. There's probably been several I can'ts, I won't, they won't, it's not possible, there's no way, I don't like, right? All of those kinds of things that we tell ourselves, and then it reflects in how we do something. So our outlook is sort of our mindset on something. We would call that in a lot of ways head trash, because there's a lot of things we tell ourselves, especially in sales, that aren't true. Sales is full of fear. It's also full of rejection. So it creates an enormous place for a lot of self-limiting beliefs, things that they're not true, but we tell ourselves are true. Many of my clients used to tell me, and right now we're doing this virtually, but they would come to me and say, Haley, you don't understand, networking doesn't work. And you as sales leaders have probably heard that excuse too. Or they won't take my call if I call the president of the company, right? Or whatever belief it is, then we make a judgment about it. So we make a judgment about what isn't going to happen, what won't happen, and we create a storyline. And then that reflects in our actions, and ultimately we validate it, and then that becomes our outlook. So networking doesn't work, then we make a judgment about the fact that it's going to be a waste of time. Then I go there and talk to only the people that I know, and then it reinforces my belief and my outlook that networking doesn't work. The key to breaking through beliefs is going to go back to those daily, weekly behaviors, because if it's important to me to make a goal, whether it's a financial goal, I want a new kitchen, I want to be a vice president, whatever it is on the goal side, that's going to be my anchor. And that's going to be your anchor with your people, to be able to say, I thought those goals were really important to you, and here's the action. So how do we get better at it? Is it technique? Do we need to work on beliefs? Do I need to go with you? Do I need to do a ride along? Do we need to be in this together? How do we sort of improve, right? And that goes back to the triangle. So beliefs are really important. What's one belief you need to change as a leader? Here's another place to participate in the chat. What's one belief your people need to change? I'm sure that over these last 6, 7, 8 weeks, there's been a lot about beliefs. And I know I've seen it in myself, in our clients, in my associates and networking partners and friends, right? There's been sort of these moments where we're feeling really good, and then there's moments where we're maybe not feeling so great. And that plays a big role in terms of our success. So if there's anything you'd like to add to the chat, this would be a great time to add some things. So let's talk for a few minutes before we wrap up about the importance of having a playbook. So as important as it is to have behavior, it's really important to have a playbook for your organization. So as much as I can say that behavior and sales process and accountability process and hiring process, those are all headlines. If we were to write a billboard about sales leadership, those words would be on there. And so would playbook. So you have to help your people understand what is it that they're supposed to be doing every day, and then how are they supposed to be doing it. If sales is a series of meaningful and purposeful conversations, and our sales process dictates that we have 3 steps to it, well then what do we do within each of those conversations? Like, what's our money talk track? What's our talk track for the very first time I talk with someone on the phone? What's the talk track when I need to get to a higher authority? Or what's my talk track when they give me a big stall or a think it over, where they tell me that they want me to discount the price, right? We have to have some systems in place, and we have to have some talk tracks, and we have to have a playbook. And that's also what will help you as a sales leader remain in control and will remain effective. Because without these things, it's sort of, if I was the sales leader, it would be, well, that's nice, that's Haley's ideas. Versus this is the playbook that we've created for our organization because we know that it works. And playbooks, by the way, should come from your people and you designing them just as much as it should come from a methodology that you choose to adopt, right? So you have to have a sales process. Have to have some methodology for how that process functions. And then you have to have a playbook that supports how all of those conversations take place. And I think this is an area where people really get lost. And I've seen, certainly since we've shifted to a virtual environment, people are lost. And they're sort of saying, at least to us, well, what do I do now on a virtual sales call? Like, I wasn't even sure I was clear before on an in-person call, and I could just sort of rely on my great personality to be awesome in the meeting. But now I'm on this virtual thing, and now I don't know what to do. And so that creates sort of disharmony. And then what happens is, because people don't know what to do, then they won't do anything. And if you don't have a stellar relationship with the team, not that you don't, I'm sure you all have awesome relationships with your people, but if you don't, then they're also not going to come to you and be vulnerable and say, hey boss, I don't really know how to do this virtual call. I know I need to run a sales call virtually, I just don't know how to do it. And so your people may be wondering those things. So if you have figured it out, if you've figured out how to do something like that, support your team, call everybody together and say, hey team, let's talk about the mechanics of running a virtual call. How do we do that? How do we start the call? How do we be an effective facilitator on the call? How do we make sure that we're asking the right questions? How do we make sure that we time it properly? How do we make sure that we are on track, that we're on message, that we're not forgetting about people, and oh, by the way, that we've pre-call planned that it's going to be a virtual call. I mean, there's so many things just to running a virtual sales meeting. So think about the playbooks that you have for your organization. If you haven't spent time on this, this is a big blind spot for companies. And certainly 7, 8 weeks ago, we probably weren't focused on this. We were just focused on making sales and results, and life was really good. And sales were really good, right? But then we forget about, well, wait a second, was that the economy? Or was that my skill? Or was that our playbook? Or was that our process? And then when things change, and no one could have predicted this, right? There's a major interruption. It causes us now to be open and see, hopefully with clear eyes, that there may be some areas that you as a sales leader could button up for your team. So sales playbook is another area, or sales leadership playbook. Those are areas to help you. Now, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about you for a second. As a sales leader, it starts with you. And I don't care what your title is, whether you're the owner of the company, you're a managing director in a professional services firm, you're a salesperson that has influence on the team, you are the president of a company, right? You all have a role, and it always starts with you. So you have to think about, where am I as a leader and how am I doing as a leader? And there are sort of 4 conversations that you want to think about having with yourself. And then you ultimately want to have those with your team. The first conversation is the compassionate conversation, allowing yourself to feel how you want to feel, understanding that times are difficult, that things have shifted, and not everything looks like it did 7-8 weeks ago. And by the way, we're probably going to have a combination of this in the future. So being compassionate is a big piece of supporting yourself, but also supporting your people. Being compassionate that they're dealing with a lot of change right now, and that what looked normal doesn't necessarily look the same now. So being compassionate with your people. The second piece to this is vulnerability. I know that you probably hear that word and you see accountability written here, and you're saying, vulnerability and accountability, how does this work? Well, vulnerability is your friend as a leader, because if we don't sort of get real with ourselves, with what is it that I need to work on? What is it that I could do better? What is it that I want to do better for my team? That sense of vulnerability is going to ooze out onto the rest of the organization and create that sort of dialogue with your people. So the more vulnerable you are to your own goals, your own plans, your own activities, and how you're doing to achieve them, the more they're going to be that way. And the more open they are going to be sharing those things with you. The more you are open, the more they're open. The more you have all the answers, the more they have all the answers. And that's never a good place to be. Accountability is also incredibly important. I speak on this all the time, that accountability is you guiding someone to achieve what they said that they were going to do when they were going to do it by. And that's why accountability is really misunderstood, because oftentimes it gets flipped around, that I'm holding you to something that I want you to do versus me holding you to something that you want to do. And that's the real magic of accountability. And that's why accountability gets all mixed up, right? And it has sort of a negative connotation, but accountability is such a powerful and important thing. We have to have a process for that. And as sales leaders, I recommend 3 conversations every week. It's a Monday morning check-in, less than 10 minutes with everybody. What are you doing this week? What proactive prospecting activities, what opportunities do you have coming up? It's a check-in. Not a time for stories and you know, the 16 reasons why things aren't going to work. It's just check-in. And Fridays, you have a 15-minute checkout. How did the week go? Let your people rate themselves and have them talk about what happened during the week. And then have a sales funnel review meeting. That's less than an hour. Some people are making their sales funnel review meetings 2, 3, 4 hours. Yikes. Do it in an hour. What opportunities are on the pipeline? What's the next step? If it's anything less than follow up, we skip it, right? Because that's not necessarily a specific action item. So those are your 3 conversations. And those are the conversations that are going to keep you from being a micromanager. Those are going to be the conversations that are going to keep you in a great place with your people, because you're talking frequently. And then you have to have vision. So vision, what is the vision for myself? Where do I want to be 60 days from now, 90 days from now? Where do I want to be next year? What's the vision for my team? And that has to be really clear. So if you, in these temporary, interesting times, have any sort of moments to think about this piece, I would say that this is another area where you want to spend some time. What's the vision for myself? What's the vision for my team? And what's the ultimate vision for my organization? So I am so happy to have been here with you. I know I shared a lot with you today, but as leaders, the best that we can do for our people is build a system where our people can be really successful, where they know what's expected of them, that they have regular, ongoing, supportive dialogue from their manager, that your job as a sales leader is to help them be successful, either with you or ultimately somewhere else. And the nature of success has three things: behavior, what I do every day, every week, every month, what my beliefs say. Do I have supporting beliefs? Do I have non-supporting beliefs? How do I feel about myself, my organization, and ultimately what I sell? And then lastly, but not least, what skills do I need to have to be able to execute on those behaviors? So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go to my colleague, Megan. I don't know if there was any questions in the chat, but if you have any questions, we have a couple of minutes, and I'm happy to answer any of those for you here today. And if there's any conversations that you'd like to have, I know we spoke about a lot of different things. My email's listed here, haley.haggerty@sandler.com. Happy to chat with you offline about any of these things and dig in a little bit deeper. Megan?
Well, good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for being here. Haley, fantastic job. So we did have a couple of questions come in through the private chat, so let's bring these to life. We have, we'll probably start with 3 or 4. So the first question that came through was, of course, we're all home. There's a lot happening. There's kids and husbands, wives, pets, you name it, at home right now. And we're all sort of being pulled in a bazillion directions right now. So Haley, what would you recommend in terms of how do we keep on track with our goals, plans, and actions as you laid out? How do we still get work done effectively and productively? And is there anything here that you could speak to in terms of maybe how we're spending our time and how that speaks to our return on our time that we invest?
That's a great question. There's a lot of pieces to that question. Well, think about your behavior in 4 categories, right? So there's 4 categories that we at Sandler talk about all the time. And there's keep, attain, recapture, and expand. So there's things that I need to do to keep current clients. There's things that I need to do to keep myself in a really good place. So it's both for you and your accounts. And oh, by the way, there's accounts that I want to pay attention to. There's things that I need to do to attain new business. So that's all the prospecting activities: networking, referrals, giving referrals, getting referrals, having discovery meetings, right? Those are all the activities. Then there's recapture: people that I used to talk to, people that I used to do business with, people that I used to network with, opportunities that were a no for now 6 months ago. Those are some activities. And then certainly expand. How do I expand my network? How do I expand opportunities? How do I expand in other areas of an organization? So I think your behavior, daily, weekly, monthly, should be split into those 4 categories. And I recommend too, and I know we say this all the time, Megan, that people should have a smattering of behaviors in all 4. Now, I fully get that you might have some people on your team that are fully dedicated to attain. They're only hunting. Well, there probably are some things, though, that they could be doing for themselves in each of those other 4 activities and squares along the map. So KARE, keep, attain, recapture, expand. It's a great way to sort of segment your behavior. But I think for other things, right, like we know that these days are probably more busy in some ways than they were prior to this. I know for myself, I used to spend 2+ hours a day in the car in traffic. Well, I don't have those 2 hours in traffic, but now those 2 hours are definitely productive doing other things. So how do I still maintain this sense of productivity, but being at home? I would say, look, if you know that you need to make 4 dials, you need to send 2 notes, you need to check in on LinkedIn with 10 people, you need to have 2 discovery meetings, like that's the number. You need to have a number so that you can check that off. And those are your daily wins. Notice that there wasn't closed sales there because we can't control that. That'll happen as a result of our behavior. But take breaks. get up, take breaks, do things very methodically during the day, but take breaks. And I've seen that that has been a real success. There has to be some planning and some shifting. And you're right, Megan, there's cats and dogs and, you know, the lawn person is coming over, and then we've got the grocery delivery, and husbands are home. And so it takes a bit of pre-call planning. It takes a bit of pre-day planning. But I think too, if you could think about what's 3 things you need to accomplish every day, and set that at the beginning of every day, and do that for your people, help your people do that, they'll be wildly successful.
You also talked about looking for the right people, doing some people banking right now, and planning for the future. What sort of qualities do you recommend that sales leaders look for in salespeople hires?
Well, there's a lot of different qualities, and it has a lot to do, I think, with the sales cycle that you're in. So if you're looking for an inside salesperson, they have different behavioral characteristics than somebody that's an outside salesperson, for example. And I get that right now we're all inside, so I totally get that. But behavior is a really important piece. Like hiring, I could do a whole thing on hiring. I won't bore you with it today, but hiring is really important, because what happens is we hire based on who we like. Let's just face it. And we fall in love very quickly. We're human beings. So we meet somebody and we go, oh, they're great. They're awesome. They were really nice. And then they show up and you're going, why are they not producing? Or why do they make so many excuses? Or why aren't they able to just go do their job? Why are they coming to me every 5 minutes, right? And so those are some of the behavior pieces that we need to get to in the interview process. And I always recommend sort of looking at, good tip is, if I need somebody to do that behavior, did they do that behavior before? So if I need somebody to prospect and be on the phone all day prospecting and making 70 dials a day, I need to know that they made 70 dials a day in the past, or that they've done that. It's really hard unless you're teaching somebody from the ground up, and that's a whole other category. But it's really hard to expect somebody to do something if they've never done it in the past, but you hope that they're going to translate it to your environment. So make sure that you think about what behaviorally have they done in the past. Is that going to get me to the behaviors that I expect that they do when they show up at my door?
And I think we have time for just one last question, but when we go back to the success triangle, the behavior, attitude, and technique pillars there, what are some of the either shifts that you think people have made or should make, or maybe some of the breakthroughs they can make in those 3 buckets, behavior, attitude, and technique right now in these very interesting and temporary times, as you said?
Well, let's start with belief. So I think there has never been a better time to have a conversation with someone than now. So if your belief system or your people's belief system is anything less than that, then that we have to change. Because that right there, if the opposite were true, that right now is not a good time to have a conversation, then they're not going to have their behavior is going to reflect that. And ultimately what they say on those calls, if in fact they did make one, will sound like they don't want to have a conversation. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if your behavior has to support that right now is the best time to have a conversation with anybody. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to make a sale. Doesn't necessarily mean we're always going to talk about a sale. It's the best time to have a conversation. And that may just very well be checking in with your current clients to make sure that they're supported and that they need what they have, or they have what they need. And I think behavior too, some shifts there, Megan, we've seen, I think at the beginning of this, right? I said this last week and I got a few chuckles and maybe you'll laugh, but I think at the beginning of this, it was sort of like, let's eat a lot of brownies and just sort of like ice cream and maybe some Oreos on top and just pull the covers over our head, right? Because it was kind of like, I don't know what to do. But we're now approaching May. So this has been 8 weeks. And we don't know how long this is going to go on. And this is probably going to be a combination of what we do in the future. So how do we then get more effective? And I've started to see like short bursts of effectiveness, and also companies really start to define how many of what activity do I need to do every day in order to meet my goal. So how many calls, how many dials, how many LinkedIn reach outs, how many articles, like just think about how many, and then do that, and then celebrate it. Celebrate the wins. And the wins are what you did every day. The wins is not making a sale. Yeah, we can all bang the drums and hit the gong and be excited about making a sale. It's awesome. But the best thing is that somebody did what they said they were going to do every single day, and that we should celebrate. As leaders, if you're not celebrating that every day, you're missing it. Your people need to be celebrated. So that's a big one for now.
Love it. Thank you, Haley, and thanks everyone for those great questions.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up today's seminar, and thank you very much, Haley and Megan, along with Sandler, for your presentation. We all are definitely going to be working on our new playbooks, and for sure on adapting some of our behavior patterns that we have developed during this epidemic. With that, I just want to thank everybody today for attending the webinar. We do have several other webinars that are coming up, so please make sure to check the Chamber website, along with our daily, well, now it's 3 times a week emails that we're producing. And check out tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock, we are going to have our very first virtual networking event. So please make sure to go on the website and register for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do some breakout rooms, and instead of having our face-to-face monthly business after hours, we are going to have it virtually. So hope to see a lot of you there. And again, Megan and Haley, thank you so much for taking the time and helping our members share your stories here. All right?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Good day, everybody. Bye-bye.